This is the Aptitude Outdoors podcast, where we interview travelers, explorers, and outdoorsmen and women to bring you the best tips and stories from around the world. Life is hard, and we're out here doing larger-than-life things, whether it's pushing ourselves physically in the outdoors or mentally at work or in the podcast studio. Absolute Aid is here to help you focus, recover, and stay calm during your most intense moments. Absolute Aid, created by nature, made with science, for those who seek to do more. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Aptitude Outdoors podcast. Thanks for tuning back in. Today, we have special guest Christine Reed, author of Alone in Wonderland. If you haven't read this book yet, I highly suggest you check it out. I'm always talking about books on here, so excited to talk to an author, especially someone who loves the outdoors as much as I do. So Christine, welcome. How are you doing today?
Great. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. So the book, there's a lot to take in, so we will absolutely talk about that. But before we get started with that, I want to know, how did you become someone who seems to have become fully infatuated with the outdoors, someone that I can relate to because I feel the same way about myself. So where did this passion come from? I know you talk about a little in the book, but was this something that was always been around or relatively new for you?
Yeah, I kind of came to hiking in my mid-20s. I hadn't really done much outdoors stuff. My parents did not really take us out. So it was sort of foreign to me. And, I moved to Arkansas and a couple of people sort of took me out hiking and I hated it. And it was hot and sticky and I was really out of shape and I just didn't enjoy it at all. And so I kind of had put in my, okay, things I don't want to do is go hiking when I get invited. But then, after I graduated from college, I was sort of looking for direction in my life and kind of ran into that, okay, I've done all the things I've been told that I should do with my life, go to college, get a degree, get a job. And I'm just feeling not fulfilled in any way. And I sort of stumbled on a blog about the Appalachian Trail when I was at work one day and I started reading and I just couldn't stop. So I was reading all these different blogs about people's experiences and the way that people talked about how hiking long distance changed their life and changed who they were was really appealing to me in that moment where I was feeling kind of lost.
Yeah.
So I decided to hike the Appalachian Trail. Sorry.
No. Yeah. And it's so funny because I have, a similar story. I did the same thing. I went to college and I didn't go to college to get a job per se. I'm just a naturally curious person. So that's why I podcast, because I get to ask a lot of questions and it's really awesome for me. But yeah, I did the same thing. And reading the book again is funny because we were actually on the Appalachian Trail in 2015 at the same time. But, I started super late. So there's very slim chances that we would have ran into each other. But that's kind of funny. But yeah, I can relate to that totally. I think the kind of rat race world that we live in now is kind of bullshit. I hate it so much. I love, the realness of the outdoors, and you don't find that anywhere else. And I think a lot of people who backpack or spend a lot of time in the outdoors can totally relate to that, because that's why we mostly do it. It's never about backpacking. It's about getting away from that kind of stuff. So I don't know if you have any sort of deeper philosophy on that in the outdoors in general, but isn't that why we're really out there?
Totally. Yeah. Something I talk about a lot is just the idea that being outdoors and backpacking, it kind of strips away all of the distractions of our modern life that keep us from ever knowing who we truly are. And yeah, when you get out there and you're just my job today is to eat and walk, it allows so much more room for you to access your inner self in a way that we just don't do in the regular world when we're answering emails and talking to our boss and doing whatever projects and going to the post office. We just have so many things to occupy our mind on a day-to-day basis that a lot of us never really dive any deeper than that because we can get away with not doing so.
Yeah. And I always kind of feel bad for my friends who aren't into outdoors stuff because I guess there's an escape in a way in like video games and stuff like that and watching football and things of that nature. But for me, it does absolutely nothing. Like I would much rather never do any of that. I would just go outside all the time. And, I think it's very important nowadays that people maybe kind of reconsider their thoughts on the outdoors because you do a lot of outdoor stuff. You don't just backpack. It looks like you do a lot of rock climbing, and you're also an author and things of that nature. So, it's good to have all these experiences in the outdoors because I've found that once you experiment and explore different avenues of the outdoors, whatever those activities are, kayaking, backpacking, rock climbing, any of this stuff, it's all very similar in a lot of ways, and it all is a way to live now rather than, with work and stuff, we spend a lot of time dreading and pushing things off and trying to get away with as little as possible, at least myself personally. And, it's when you're doing these like intensive activities, that's it. You're there, you're doing it. And, I don't know. I feel like people just miss out on that because they spend so much time on social media and stuff like that instead of living. I don't know. Do you think that is true?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's funny that you say that you can escape with, TV and sports and things like that. And I do think that's true, but I don't really think of going outdoors and backpacking as an escape. It's more like a coming to myself. And so, yes, I think in our normal lives, things like TV and even books and stuff like that, like it's a way to like be mentally present somewhere other than our own existence. And like when we're outdoors, a lot of times you can't do those things. And so it's the opposite of escape. There is no escape.
Yeah. And to me, there's nothing more real than that experience of the outdoors because like for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years, that's what we did as human beings. And we've completely stripped that away now. And it's all about, who can have the coolest car. And, I also don't care about any of that. And, in the book, you touch on van life a little bit and just kind of branching out on your own. And, I kind of experienced that when I was younger. I played music and there were 6 of us living in a van. Like it was not the solitary experience that you write about in your book. It was like having 6 smelly roommates. It was awful. But, that experience does make you think about things in a completely different way. So are you still kind of doing that, or is that something that's kind of moved on, or how's the van thing going? Because you talk about it quite a bit.
Yeah. So when I wrote the book, I was living in an old Dodge Ram van. And not too long after that, I got a nicer Ford Transit. Nice. And I lived in that for about 1.5 years. And then I sold it this past winter. So as part of the process of becoming a published author, launching my book and running the business, living in a van just wasn't practical for that. And hopefully someday it will be again. But yeah, right now I'm living in a condo in Denver. So it's been a little bit of an adjustment being a house person again.
Yeah, it's never, especially after any sort of through hike, like long, short, whatever, it always feels so weird to just be in one place. And it takes a lot of getting used to. Even like after the Appalachian Trail, the Wonderland Trail, the Colorado Trail, do you find that still to be the case? Like every time you're done, does it feel strange to you? Because for me, it was so weird after the AT. I was like, I don't know what to do anymore.
Absolutely. It does get easier to kind of switch back and forth. But I think one of the main things for me that has helped me to find center in myself in my quote normal life off trail is that my normal life off trail is not what it was before I hiked the AT. And I think that's a huge part. I think when you go on a big hike, it does change how you see the world, and it changes how you see yourself and how you want to operate as part of society. And if you then try to go back immediately to your job you had before and your house you had before and all of your family who doesn't really understand what you went through. And like, it's really hard because it's like putting a square peg in a round hole. Like you just don't feel like you fit anymore. And I think the people I've seen who have the most like happiness and success after hiking a long trail are people who then change their life to fit who they are now. And that's kind of how I got into van life. Like I came off the trail, I came to Denver and got a job, and I worked a job for like a year, and I just didn't feel like I was in the right place. And that's when I started thinking about van life, and kind of in the next year made that transition. And then living on the road for 3 years, I felt like it made sense to me in a way that trying to fit back into a normal job life didn't make sense. And now becoming an author, I work for myself and I write and I, run a writing club, and I have kind of social things that are built around that experience. And my time is my own to decide how to interact with the outdoors and interact with the people in my life. And building something like that where you really feel like you have control and that you're doing the things you value and not the things that you just feel like you have to do, I think is super key to being able to make that transition, and feeling just as fulfilled off the trail as you're feeling on the trail.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of things that after any sort of adventure, I mean, it doesn't have to be a thru hike, it can be anything. I think a lot of people struggle with that freedom is basically taken away. It's like you bought this time of freedom. And, I struggle with that for a long time. I did the same thing. I worked, many jobs since I've been home from trail. I worked in conservation for a while. It wasn't what I thought it was. And then I worked in, I tried the whole like Fortune 500 thing for a while. That was the worst decision of my life. I would never recommend that to anyone. And, after 5 years, you determine that the only thing that's really important is being who you are, because it's like a continual reminder with myself about what's actually important. Like, a lot of people spend a lot of time thinking about buying stuff or, getting that promotion. And I've just completely lost that. I don't give a shit about any of that anymore. And like, I don't know if you can ever do something like that and not walk away with a different mindset, because some people can go back and it was just like a thing that they wanted to do. But for myself personally, I can't just go back. And I think being true to yourself and what you actually enjoy after finding that out is really what's most important in life. And that's basically, from what I can understand, is what the book is about. I mean, the book is based around backpacking, but it's not a book about backpacking. Like, I mean, it's very much so like a book, about becoming who you are as a person. And I don't know if you would agree with that. You wrote the book, so you would obviously have a better say in it, but that was my interpretation of the book.
Yeah, absolutely. As an author, I've heard other authors talk about like having book clubs tell them what their book is about and being like, oh yeah, that is what my book is about. And I definitely had some like ideas and messages I wanted to include in the book, and becoming who you are is probably like number one or number two. It's an exploration of independence and loneliness and how those things intersect and overlap. And how we seek ourselves in the outdoors. And I think, one of the things I say in the book is like, a long hike is never about hiking. It's never about like, I love carrying a backpack up mountains, because like, who does? And I think you can learn to, and there are people who do, but I kind of roll my eyes at those people because I'm like, this is hard and it's uncomfortable and it sucks. And like, you can like it for the bigger gains of who you are and your strength. And because you want to be a strong physical person, like you can like that it is productive in that way, but like the physical act of doing it is hard and like not fun. So like if you, and then, it's one of those things too, like people talk about when you go on trail, you have to know why you're doing it. And it has to be bigger than because I want to hike up mountains all day. Like you have to have a real reason, because it's hard and you're out there for a long time and your brain is kind of just churning always about like, do I have to be doing this? This is uncomfortable. I want to go home. I miss my family. Like there's so many reasons to quit and not do it. And so to be successful and to go big miles, like you have to have a reason bigger than just because you think it'll be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one thing that takes a lot of, like interpersonal thought, I think, before you do any sort of long distance trail or even like multi-day, multi-week trips. It's never about the physical aspect or the, you know, being lightweight or whatever. Like I find a lot of bickering in the backpacking community about who can be the lightest and fastest and whatever. And like for me, that's completely irrelevant. It has nothing to do with your gear. I still have the same gear I used on the Appalachian Trail to go backpacking like 5 years ago because it costs a lot of money and it's still completely fine. And you know, I remember I used to write a little bit for the Trek and what and the like right before they rebranded or whatever. And you know, I remember just like reading the comments one day. I like posted my pack weight. It was like the biggest mistake ever. I said like I was pretty lightweight, and they're like, "This guy's the biggest, dumbest idiot that's ever walked the earth." And I'm like, "You guys are missing the point here. Like this, the whole reason that you do something like this is like." It's challenging. You get to be in your own head and like learn about life and think about what's really important to you. Like I'll go out there with a stick. I really don't care. Like it's completely. So I noticed in your book, which was nice, you never talk about gear. So that's like refreshing for me because that's all people want to talk about, and I just hate talking about it. So do you is that actually something that you like care about at all, or are you just kind of a let's go?
I mean, yeah, it's nice to have light gear and not to have to carry as much weight, but I think, you know, as long as your gear is of medium quality and weight, like it works, it gets the job done, you know, it's just not that important to me. I am still carrying my backpack from 2015. I've upgraded some of my other things. My pack on the AT was probably well over 40 pounds. And I think I've got it down to like close to 30. Yeah. But I definitely don't like, I haven't, it's not something I talk about a lot. And like, I didn't post on my social media, like starting the Colorado Trail, my base weight is 26 pounds. Like I just didn't, I just don't think about it. And so, you know, I'm like, I know what my pack has in it. I know that everything in there is necessary. Like I have enough experience to know I'm not carrying like a hairbrush or like, you know, just like stuff you don't need. And so I'm like, unless I want to spend a lot of money, there's not really a way to improve this. So what do I care about other people's opinions? And then, of course, even so, like I like to clip things on the outside of my pack that I'm going to need throughout the day. And like I posted a photo from the Colorado Trail, and some person on my personal Facebook was like, "Wow, looks like you're carrying way too much stuff." Blah blah blah. And I was just like, "Cool, like thanks for sharing your opinion." Like I'm not asking, and also not going to do anything about it. So, like, okay, I just you know.
It's so wild that mindset. It's something similar happened to me recently. I like my brother and I decided one day we were just going to ride our bikes like 50 miles just because we wanted to. We're just like, this will be a fun thing to do today, and like post through hiking and all this stuff. It's like, how can I stay physically active and still have fun and like, you know, enjoy life and not have to like kill myself also in the process doing like stuff I don't like going to the gym and stuff like that. And some of the same thing happened. This guy just like gave me this big long rant about how I didn't buy a local bike and this and that. I'm like, dude, I'm 6'1", 240 pounds. Like I can't just go to the store and buy a bike. Like it's not the same thing. So I feel your pain. It's so weird. And people like us, we're always putting ourselves out there. We kind of asking to get our, you know, opinions that we don't want, but that's how it is. Another thing, you know, that I noticed kind of a running theme throughout the book, and it's something that you and I and probably every single other person on earth have struggled with, is like this whole image of like body image versus trying to be fit and fitting in. And it's talked about a lot more nowadays than it ever was, but it's a weird like topic arising. I see a lot more in the outdoors community as well as like the object of being comfortable in your own skin. So what's your kind of thoughts on like being okay with who you are, but also like trying to maintain health and fitness to do the things you like? Because the only reason I exercise is because I want to be able to do the things I love in the outdoors. That's it. Like I like to mountain bike, I like to hike, I like to run. And that's the only reason I ever exercise outside of there. If it wasn't for that, I would just sit on the couch all day, like 100%.
That's big of you to admit as an outdoors person. Yeah. I do think there's so much pressure, especially in the outdoors community, to look a certain way, to be able to meet certain metrics of like speed and how many peaks you're doing. And there's all these like checklists people are trying to check off to like prove how outdoorsy they are. And I feel like a lot I feel like a lot of people approach through hiking that way too, as if it's some kind of like trophy that they're gonna like say, you know, I'm ex outdoorsy because I hiked the Appalachian Trail. And it is a little bit of a challenging thing to address, especially as somebody who's like, I've written a book and I'm talking, you know, I'm speaking about the outdoors community and stuff. And it's like something that I've struggled with for a long time. I grew up being really, I always thought I was really out of shape. I never could run in PE. I just had a really hard time with physical stuff. And I would look at other kids and think like, man, why is it so easy for them? And like, I feel like I'm dying and like the heart racing and the way that I always felt like I couldn't breathe. And I thought maybe I have asthma. I just had like a lot of questions growing up. And, you know, I recently found out actually after writing Alone in Wonderland that I have a medical condition that causes me to not be able to breathe when I'm exercising. And it makes my cardio really difficult. And that diagnosis has sort of made me re-examine my relationship with the outdoors. And so that's actually something I'm going to talk about a lot in the next book. The idea that part of wanting to hike the Appalachian Trail was because I wasn't happy with my body. And because I thought, oh, this is a way I can kind of be immersively hiking, right? I'm just going to hike all day, every day. It's going to be horrible and hard. And it'll get me in shape. I thought I was going to come off the Appalachian Trail like super fit. And I had this idea of who I would be after that. And, you know, it just didn't happen. And I didn't know at the time it was because of this medical condition that I just will never achieve a level of fitness that other people have. But in the meanwhile of not knowing that, I have pursued 5 years of outdoors activities trying to get my body to a certain place and a place that I see other people at. And I always thought I can get there if I just like do enough things. And that relationship that I'm out there doing these outdoorsy things because I wanted my body to change. Like along the way, I learned so many other things and I built this beautiful relationship with the outdoors. And now I recognize that like my body is kind of at the peak that it's ever going to be. And that has completely changed the way that I'm looking back at my experiences and how much I was focused on who I was going to be as opposed to what I was experiencing in that moment. And it's kind of funny that you talk about being present and social media and how we distract ourselves. And I think sometimes we internally do those things too, right? I'm like hiking these trails and rock climbing and trail running and like doing all of these things, thinking at some point I will be this person who these things are not that hard for. And unfortunately, that's just not in my destiny. But I think so many of us use exercise in any form, including the outdoors, as a way to punish our bodies or try to change them when we should be like building a relationship with our body in a different way.
Yeah, it's a weird thought process for me because there's something wrong with my brain. I think I just love beating the absolute shit out of myself. Like I don't know what it is. I just love it. Like I really do enjoy like hard physical stuff now. And that's so insane because when I was a kid, I was like the same way. I was not in shape. I was like a little fat kid. And like I never exercised in my whole life until I trained for the Appalachian Trail. And then like I found this passion for like insanely hard work. And I don't know where it came from because like it's just where I'm at now. And I just like I feel weird if I don't work out hard, like at least 5-6 days a week. I just, you know, I've made friends with people who enjoy tough things too. And I think part of it is like this spiral of the only people I could find, because I'm out in Northwest Ohio. I mean, we don't have these mountainous landscapes where like a lot of people that I know that love the outdoors have. Like they have these great, like my friend James in the Adirondacks, he can just go climb a mountain any day. And it's like just a fun, normal thing. I'm like, I got a cornfield out my window right here and it's windy and flat. So I got to like find a way to beat myself up like that. And a lot of my friends are into hard stuff like cycling, mountain biking, trail running, because that's what we have to work with, kayaking. And, you know, I've just fallen in love with that process of like, you know, you hear a lot of these ultra marathoners and things talk about like you embrace the suck or embrace the suffering. And it's kind of the same for me mentally that you find on the Appalachian Trail or any sort of through hike. It's like when you're in that moment, it's like you're testing yourself continually, like pushing that next limit and seeing like, if I can just get another 2 miles in today. And then by the end of the year, you look and it's like, oh, that 2 miles that I was working for turned into like 30 real fast. Like, what am I doing? So, it's always weird for me because like I wasn't that person for the majority of my life. I didn't work out. Physical fitness was the hardest thing for me to ever even like fathom. And to see myself where I'm at now is so weird, like in retrospect. So, you said you're working on a new book, and, is there any secrets you're willing to release yet about what it's about, or we don't have to talk about it? It's your choice.
I'm definitely working on it. It is framed a bit around my hike on the Colorado Trail. It won't be obviously as detailed about the trail as the Wonderland Trail was in Alone in Wonderland, because the trail is 5 times as long. So there's too many details to include. But yeah, it'll use stories from the Colorado Trail hike and from my past. And it's really an exploration of relationship to body and kind of this idea of the difference between pushing yourself and feeling very physically present in your body versus punishing your body, and coming to appreciate what it can do for you in a way that I feel like the trail is such an excellent place to find that relationship, because it's so easy when you're on trail to understand, like, if I eat this much food, I can hike for this many miles. And you really see the correlation of like fueling yourself and like stretching and taking care of those little, like, oh, I have a blister and I need to manage that. And just the way we treat our bodies on trail, I feel like is much more specific than how we do in normal life, where it's really easy to just ignore pain and say, I'm just going to sit on the couch today. And like, you get into these habits of just like accepting things as normal that are not normal, like ignoring and not paying attention. And then also I feel like sometimes it's really hard, especially if you're pretty sedentary or have like a desk job, to recognize the relationship between food as fuel for the things that you're doing, because you're not like actively using and burning all of the fuel that you're consuming every day.
Well, they say that Americans are like chronically dehydrated, and most people don't even know it. And that is a back to the Appalachian Trail again. I normally don't talk about it but since we have that in common, it's easy to relate to. But like I didn't understand, like, when people talked about understanding their bodies, like on the trail is where I understood that for the first time, because I had never understood what it felt like to be dehydrated. I never understood what it was like to be like actually hungry, and like your body gives you these signals and you have to pay attention to them. And that translates really well now to even off trail. Like, I know when I'm dehydrated. I know when I need more calories or less calories. I know if I'm eating too much. And it's like you just become in tune with the way your body works, the way it's designed or supposed to work, and I think that's a lot of the stuff I always talk to reverts back to like the origins of humanity. Like, we've lost so much of like what was normal for so many people throughout a lot of time. And, you can get as philosophical as you want, evolution continuing, blah, blah, blah. I don't know, whatever way you want to go with it. But I think it's super important to learn that. And, it doesn't matter what sport or activity you do. I think that's super important. And, my relationship with food from coming off the Appalachian Trail is so drastically different than it's ever been, from a conservation standpoint, from a ethical standpoint. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that yourself, like not just backpacking food, but food in general, like as it's produced and things in America, because that's something that really consumes my mind a lot lately, and it's kind of gross. To me. Are
you a new vegan?
No, I'm an old one.
Okay.
I actually hunt now because I think a lot of things are so disgusting, and I do not want to eat anything from the store. But I don't know how often my guests are comfortable with that or things like that. But that's a whole different ballgame. But
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I definitely didn't know any of that stuff when I went on the Appalachian Trail, and I was eating, cookies and Cliff Bars and all that stuff, and like literally anything anyone handed me, I was like, yes, I will eat that.
Yeah.
But definitely since then, I worked for a natural food store for 2 years after the Appalachian Trail, and that I learned a lot about food production, and I read some of the classic, Eating Animals and The Omnivore's Dilemma and some of those. And it's one of those things that like when you first learn all that information, you're just like, oh my gosh, how are we living this way? Like, why are we doing this? And I just want to tell everyone. And you get like really passionate about it. After so many years, it becomes like I have my habitual habits where I do shop at the natural food store. I try to eat organic. Like, a friend of my partner's has like a goat farm. And so we're going to get some goat meat from her. And we like went and visited the goats. And I think understanding and seeing where your food comes from is so important. And I do think it's so easy when we live in houses and we drive our cars and we never put our hands on the earth and we never have a relationship with the trees and the mountains and the water, especially, like, to not think about where our food comes from. And we're not raised that way culturally. And I think going out into the wild and seeing animals in their natural habitat, like, gives you a different appreciation for the earth as it would be if not for our intervention.
Yeah. And it's weird because I actually sympathize with a lot of people who have gone like vegetarian or vegan or things like that. And that's weird for a lot of people because, my social media or whatever you want to call it is literally the most ADHD outdoors page you will ever find in your life. Like one day I'm kayaking, one day I'm hunting, one day I'm like backpacking, one day I'm doing photography and wildlife and then talking about books. And I don't know, something's wrong with me. But, I think when I started this podcast, it was mostly about just like hearing stories and telling stories. But the more I talk to people like you and people who do a lot of outdoors things and think about the outdoors, I find that we all start to get these like common themes of what's important to us. And it really all boils down to like the basic necessities of life, like building community. It's all about conservation and food and things of these nature are the three themes that always pop up with everyone I talk to. And, has conservation on a broad scale entered your mind more since you've gotten to explore these big open places that are like public land and like, there's ongoing battles for everyone in the outdoors about like, conservation in these aspects. And it is scary because once they're gone, they're gone. Like what was it towards the end of the last presidency? They had like all this stuff going on where they're like just taking the monuments away from the public and using them. And like, I think that opened a lot of people's eyes up to like, oh crap, this could really be an issue for all of us, backpackers, hunters, fishermen, like anybody in the outdoors. So is that something you think about more now that you're like in this world, you live in this world all the time now in the outdoors?
Yeah. I mean, it really is in a really complicated way because it's like, it's easy to think like I'm one person, like, what am I going to do? I don't have any money. Like, how am I going to make a difference? And I do all of the things we're supposed to do as citizens of like trying not to use single-use plastic and eating organic and voting with my dollars and all of that stuff. And I do believe that stuff is important, but I also look around and see all of the people glued to their screens who they're just not even aware of what this small group of people is trying to do as a movement. And it's, I don't know, disheartening in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know. Sometimes I just have to think like, I just don't want to know because then that's one more thing I have to be upset about, right? Like if I pay attention to the news and I watch these monuments being taken away and I see the pollution and I see the drilling for oil and I see like, that stuff is important and it needs to be fixed, but also like, it's just heartbreaking. And it's so difficult for me to engage on that level when I feel like it's not something I can fix. And hopefully I can do my very small part by maybe inspiring some more people to get outside with my story and building a larger outdoors community like that way. But I just don't know what I as an activist could do versus what I as a storyteller can do, Yeah.
And it's hard because, I have the same dilemmas with, you start your format, whatever the format is. You obviously enjoy writing. That's what you're good at. I'm full of shit, so I can talk all day. That's what I'm good at. But, I think it's getting important to, like, me personally, to just get people outside, because I think that's the avenue for conservation, because like classic, by the book conservation is all fundraising and, going on these big campaigns and sticking it to BP. Whereas I don't think that's the way of the future. I think it's a lot of people like me and other, voices in the outdoors talking about these things, even for awareness. But I think our main job at all is like what you said, is inspiring to people to get outside. And I think they'll come to these conclusions on their own. I mean, it never helps to nudge people in that direction a little bit, but I think that's my purpose as someone with like a small, minuscule niche in the outdoor industry, is to like make these things known to people. But let's kind of switch topics here. We haven't really talked about that book that much, because my brain just goes like at full speed in random directions. So Alone in Wonderland, I've been to Washington one time, and I've seen Mount Rainier. Mind blowing. How did you choose this trail specifically after, your time on the AT? What made you say like, this is the one?
I was living in my van and traveling in the Pacific Northwest. I'd heard of the Wonderland Trail via like backpacking forums, but I'd never really looked into it. And I had spent about a month in Portland by myself, and I hadn't really made any friends, and I was sort of just like lurking, like purposelessly in the parks, reading books and hanging out.
Sounds awesome.
I mean, it was nice, but it was definitely getting to a point where I was like, I guess I have to like make a decision about doing something now. And my friend called me. She was going to drive to Washington to visit another friend of hers. And she said, I want to stop in Mount Rainier and do a day hike. Like, will you come up and meet me? And so I looked how far it was. It was a couple hours. And so I said, sure. And I drove up, and she and I had actually met living in Yosemite National Park like a few years before. And Yosemite was my introduction into national parks. So since then, every park I've gone to is either like as good as or not as good as Yosemite. So it's like a pretty high bar. And so she said, yeah, come to Mount Rainier. And I thought like, yeah, it's a, national park with one mountain in it. It's probably not that exciting. So I went and met her, and I couldn't believe how beautiful it was. And I was just really blown away. By like the majesty of Mount Rainier. And we did a day hike, and on the day hike, we crossed the Wonderland Trail. There was like a sign, Wonderland Trail that way. And I thought, I've heard of that. So I Googled it, and it was, it's a 93-mile loop that goes around Mount Rainier. And I thought, I wonder if I could get on that real quick and just like see what's up. So I went with her to her friend's place in Seattle, who had actually tried to do the Wonderland Trail the year before. So she had a guidebook, and she had a beer canister I could borrow. And I had my backpacking gear in the van already. So I kind of just like took her beer canister and guidebook and hit the road. And so it was really happenstance, but quite a pleasant one.
I think one of the things I really enjoyed about the book was the reliving of the awkward trail exchanges between random people, because when you're out there and it's all brand new and you're super excited and you're full of energy, and you meet these random people for minutes at a time, and you're like, this is my new best friend, and then you never see them again. And it's so weird, because like we don't do that in dating. Like you don't walk in the grocery store like, what's up, dude? You're my new bro. And then it's like, no, it's not like that. But you have these weird moments where you like interact with these people, like it's almost like you've known them for a long time, but you've never met before. And then there's this like awkward phase where you're like, all right, I guess I'm gonna go, or you're gonna go. But then you like keep running into each other sometimes, and it's this real weird dynamic on the trail. Do you ever get used to that? Because it's still awkward for me. Like I don't know how to interact in that area.
I think one of the things that I learned on the AT was to jump to that like let's be best friends mode right away, because we lose that after we're like 5 years old, right? Like as small children, everyone we meet, we're like, oh my gosh, this is my best friend. And then, that becomes like not cool, right? Like you have to like be cool and like not be that interested in other people. And so on the AT, aside from I had recently lost my mom. And so I was kind of just like doing my own internal thing on the Appalachian Trail, I wasn't very social. And I think it made it even more awkward because I did keep running to the same people over and over again. And they thought I was being a dickhead because I didn't talk to them. And so I think a lot of people on the AT got the impression that I was like cold and like not friendly. And so when I went on the Wonderland Trail, I just thought, we're like all out here doing the same thing. We're all having the same experience. It's amazing. Like, why wouldn't we want to be best friends with these people that we know we have kind of, like you said, philosophical things in common with? Because you can't spend that much time outdoors and not start going down these paths of becoming, I don't know, like a higher level version of yourself. And when you meet other people who are on similar journeys, it's really easy to connect because you have those stories of growth. And so, now when I'm on trail, I just kind of approach everybody like, hi, I'm Christine. Like, what's up? Let's be friends. And it makes it a lot more fun.
Yeah. And, it's so weird when you get to glimpse other people's lives. And like a lot of the time on the podcast, I'll talk to these people after I've a lot of people have YouTube channels and they're always telling about themselves or podcasts or there are authors of things of that nature. And it used to be really weird to me to like something like this, like read a book and then talk to the person. Cause it's like, I feel like I know you, but you have no idea who I am because it's like this weird dynamic. But now I think it's actually pretty awesome because it makes things so much more relatable because like within your story, I see a lot of the things that happened to me when I was growing up. I mean, you do dumb shit, you make bad decisions, but like that's part of life. Like there's nothing you can do about that. Everybody does that. And it's refreshing to see when other people, go through these similar struggles. You're like, okay, I guess I'm not as weird as I make myself out to be in my head. But one thing that was really relatable to me was like on the Appalachian Trail, my grandfather passed away. And, it was a very like emotional almost because like, you go through, like you're in the middle of nowhere and then you feel like shit. You're like, did I make a terrible decision coming out here? Like knowing that this was ongoing when I left. And, I didn't really know how to handle it because we were so close to the end. And I was literally like, there's some town and I always forget. I can't remember anything about the Appalachian Trail at this point. I don't remember. It's like there's like a college. It's like right on the trail, and then it's something. And
in like New Hampshire.
Yeah, we were like out there, and we were literally like we ran into some old friends. We were like literally just got like hammered. Bought some wine at like the local, I don't know, like health food store that was on the corner, and we just like were partying because we hadn't seen each other. Like laying in my tent, and you wake up to a text message like, your grandfather passed away, and I'm like, fuck, and like it's such a like he if it wouldn't have been for him pulling me aside before we left, because like he was like very ill when we left, he literally was like, do not come home. He's like, that you need to finish. He's like, I lived my life, like you need to do what you're gonna do. And like I never internalized it until after the trail, really, because you're like still living in the moment and it's not in front of you, it's not real. And, a lot of people, I don't know, I hope nobody has stories like that they have to live through because that sucks. It's terrible. And, I remember being up on top of Katahdin and my parents met me and they gave me his ashes to sprinkle up there. And it was like, I just fell apart, man. Like, it was just like, until I had that in my hand, it was like, oh shit, this is real. This is it. So it was like a bittersweet moment. And, the loss aspect of and in the middle of something like that is just like, it sucks. Obviously it sucks. I don't know where I was going with that, but I know it's like a relatable part of the book to me, and I'm sure for a lot of other people because nobody talks about that part of life very often.
Totally. That really was a big part of writing the book for me, is just to say stuff that I feel like everyone is experiencing and nobody is saying. And like, it's really an invitation for other people to like recognize the things that have made them who they are. And like, I'm sure that experience is a really profound one in your development as a human being. Mm-hmm. And when you think of things, there's like things that happened before your grandfather died and things that happened after, just like there are things that happened before you hiked the Appalachian Trail and things that happened after. And just because mm-hmm. those things coincided, like they changed you in different ways. And I think so often we have all these surface interactions with people and we never tell them who we really are. And and like me putting this book out there so literally anyone can read it and know my whole life story is an invitation for them to either share more of themselves with people that they know, or even to come back and share with me. And I've had so many readers reach out to me and say, this happened to me too, or I've experienced that also, and thank you for sharing that. And now they want to tell me their story because they feel like they know me. And it just opens up a door to intimacy that I think we often forego in our face-to-face conversations with random people that we meet, that are really important to who we are.
Yeah. And I think that's really important too. I mean, a lot of my whole like philosophy about everything anymore is just about being real. Like, it's so hard to do that nowadays because with like, it's so weird to me too, because a lot of people like know me from social media. Like a lot of my friends I've met through social media. So I think I just love social media. I'm always on social media because I post stuff every day to like just kind of raise awareness about the podcast. And I do photography. Like that's what I love to do. I want people to see it, obviously, but I really hate social media. Like I really do not enjoy it at all. Like I don't spend a lot of time scrolling the feeds and just like, I don't find much value in it personally, but like, a lot of the stuff we see nowadays, it honestly just makes people feel bad because it's not real. Like a lot of the stuff we're seeing, even in the outdoors community, isn't real. Like there's so much like fakeness going on, and like just people makes things feel so unattainable for regular people, which we're all regular people. There's no secret behind it. Like whether you're a movie star or a guy, a homeless guy, like we're all just regular, real people. We're just living the life the way we want it to be. And, I put a lot of the stuff that I do that I fail at online a lot, which like isn't a great feeling like personally, but like I just want to build myself as like something real, because like you put this story out, it's real. This is your life. And yeah, I'm sure that was not easy to write because you're putting your whole self out there to everyone. But like, do you find that to be kind of the case nowadays too? Like people putting on a front to be like pretend to be more than they are? Or do you think, because everybody wants to be seen in a good light. Nobody wants to be seen as like, oh, that guy sucks, but I feel like it's important. I feel like it's important to like embrace the failure of life sometimes because it's real. That's real life.
Yeah. I do think there is maybe two segments happening on social media, and I mostly participate on Instagram. I'm not on like a bunch of different platforms. But the group of women that I really like follow closely and have kind of built relationships with through Instagram are all right now really talking about vulnerability and weakness and ideas of what we should be versus what we feel like we really are. And I feel like a lot of people are kind of, I like to call it standing naked in front of the world. And I applaud people for doing that because I know that it is hard. But I also have heard and talked to people about that experience of putting those things out there and how the things that we're most ashamed of when they belong to us are the things that are most empowering when we share them with the world. And I write about sexual assault in my book, and that is something that I did not really ever claim as my personal experience until I wrote about it. And then I had to first admit that it had happened. And it was something that I kind of just like tucked away in the background. But I had to carry that and own it for my entire life up until I wrote about it. Yeah. And now kind of the world owns it. And I don't have to carry that shame and burden on myself anymore because I've shared it. And I think that telling people your story and revealing your vulnerabilities like give you so much more power over the shame. And if you're a Brené Brown fan, she talks a lot about shame and vulnerability. And if you're not, you should be. So, but she talks about how, our vulnerabilities and the things that we keep hidden are the things that make us the most human. And if you want people to connect, especially if you're a storyteller or even a social media influencer, and you want people to relate to you, people don't relate to perfection because we all know we're not perfect inside. So if you're putting up this, like, I am perfect, facade, people like they see it as unattainable. They see you as false. And even if it's subconsciously and they're maybe jealous or they see you as this unattainable thing, they know underneath that it's false, whether they realize they know it or not. And that's why they can't relate to you. And that's why they don't look up to you, because they're like, oh, I could never be X, Y, or Z because I know my own flaws. I know that I have mean thoughts about other people that I would never say out loud, or I know my own shameful behaviors with food, or like whatever the things are that make you a flawed human being, like will prevent you from idolizing someone who seems perfect, because you know you can never be that. So if you're presenting yourself as perfect, like people are never going to relate to you on a human level. You have to show your flaws. You have to stand naked in front of the world if you want people to relate to your story.
Yeah, and it's weird. It's a weird world we live in, but that's the hand we're dealt. That's where we're at right now. So like the way I look at it is, you can use what the gifts or the abilities or the things that you enjoy, you can use those to promote, a version of the world where it's you and me and like it's all me, or you can try and inspire people to do cool stuff. Because my whole philosophy is like, if I can do it, anybody can do it. Because I don't see anything that I'm doing as like that crazy. I just jump in head first and go for it, whether it's like hiking 2,000 miles or kayaking 150 miles or whatever, like riding a bike 50 miles, whatever. It's like I just do this stuff for fun, and that's what I enjoy. But with the book, there's so many things going on at once, and I thought it was really interesting because I love reading. I read a ton. Like that's one of my favorite hobbies to do. I like to learn. I like, I'm like an outdoors book nerd. Like if there's a book on the outdoors, I've probably read it at least once or audiobook or something about it. So where did your passion for writing come from actually? Because that's something, as much as I enjoy reading, I am very terrible at writing. I don't know if I just don't have the attention span for it or what, but how did you understand this is what I want to do?
Honestly, it came from sort of what we were just talking about, this idea that I wanted to tell that story, and I wanted to talk about vulnerability and loneliness and independence and that struggle. Because on the Wonderland Trail, I realized I wasn't the only one experiencing that. And it was one of those kind of universal moments where I was dwelling on my loneliness and feeling really sad and sorry for myself. And then I went out on the trail, and every person I met was like, why are you alone? Explain yourself to me. And I was like, I can't even explain myself to me. I'm really trying, but why are you getting up in my face about it? And so the universe was just telling me over and over again, this is something you need to deal with, and that you need to move forward on in your life. And when I started to realize that other people I was talking to were feeling the same way, it allowed me to get out of my self-pity for a moment and see my experience as something more universal. And I realized in that moment that I wanted to share it. And so I really hadn't been planning to write a book. It's something I've thought about, writing a book would be fun someday, it's definitely it's not right. The same kind of fun as hiking, hundreds of miles. It's definitely not something I was actively working toward or thought that I would be doing, at this stage in my life. But once I got off the Wonderland Trail, I really felt like I had a story worth telling. And so I just sat down and started writing. But I've always been a big reader, and I think that is a huge plus when you're trying to write, is having all that book knowledge in your brain.
Yeah, and I really like the layout of the book, because it's hard to even, just write in general, but the way you started with kind of the ending and the beginning, and you jumped around from past to present, and it is really interesting. I like that, the way, and the chapters are split up in a very interesting way. So great job on that. And we're almost at an hour here, so I don't want to keep you all day. You got stuff to do. So I wanted to ask one more observation question kind of deal that I notice a lot with the outdoors community that really frankly pisses me off is there's so many tough, badass women out there doing stuff in the outdoors, and they feel like they get when a guy does it, they're like, oh, hell yeah, he's a badass. He just hiked this trail. And the woman, they're like, oh my God, a woman did that? And I remember almost getting into a fight with the guy I used to work with when I got home from the Appalachian Trail, because a lot of the people out on the trail are women. I was just 50-50 split on the AT. And one of my friends, her trail name was Pinecone, and she was like super tough. And my wife, now wife, through hike with me, she's super tough. And like, there's just a ton of like super tough women out there doing this the same thing that I'm doing. And he said something about like, oh yeah, she probably can't do this job because she was a woman. And I was like, you're a fucking idiot. And I was like berating this man in front of like this crew of people we were working with. And everyone was like, what is wrong with this guy? And it's really like, it's just an annoying thing. So how do you think that image can be changed? Because like, it's always like when a guy does something, they're like, yeah, have fun, dude, go out there and kill it. And when a woman does, like, are you going by yourself? Are you going to bring a gun? Are you bringing 18 friends with you? Like, it's such a dumb thing in my mind. Like, I just can't wrap my head around it. I don't know.
I mean, I honestly, what can we do about it? Like, other than have these conversations, right? Like, you as a man have the more powerful voice. And for you to say, like, I think this is dumb, like that's helping for sure. I mean, I get asked all the time, aren't you scared? Isn't it dangerous? Are you going to do this or that to be safe? And I try and be really like upfront with people and not offended by those questions, because I understand that people are asking those questions out of their own sense of fear. And it really isn't about me or my ability to do anything. It's about their idea of what the thing is. And so I try to really explain to people, like, the Appalachian Trail is crowded. There's people everywhere. Like, you're not really alone. And like,
no.
There's hundreds of women out there solo hiking, right? Like, yeah. You get into groups. Like, I was, not unique in any way starting the AT by myself. There was hundreds of other women doing the same thing. And like, I made friends with them, and like, they made friends with each other. And then they joined groups that also had men in them. And like, it's just not as dangerous as I think a lot of people perceive it to be. And I do understand that there are things in this world that are dangerous for women. And I also hate that. But I think there's a difference between like a rational fear and an irrational fear. And I do try to explain that to people when they ask me those questions. But I think a lot of it is, there is a systemic thing going on. And one thing that I very recently read Anish's Mud, Rock, and Blazes about her fastest known time on the Appalachian Trail, which she also did in 2015. And I, at the end of the book, was like, I wonder if anyone has broken that record since then. And so I went to look it up, and on fastestknowntimes.com or whatever, where they list this stuff, it said the men's record, it said Appalachian Trail fastest known time, self-supported, with the guy and the time. And then it said female fastest known time, blah, blah, blah. And then it had her time, but her time was faster than his time. So shouldn't her time be listed as the generic and his be the male time? Like, why wouldn't that make sense? And I just thought, yikes, like, why is that like that? So, and it's just stuff like that. But it's like, we don't even have, it's not that there's a default who's at the top and then there's the second gender. It's the default is men, and then women are just like also here, I guess. So it's a mindset that, like, one conversation isn't going to fix, but I'm a big believer in exposing people to ideas over and over again. So hopefully everyone who's listening to this conversation, like, this is one more exposure for them to be thinking about this as an issue.
Yeah, and I mean, it's funny because people don't expect things like that to come out of my mouth all the time, just because of the way I look. They like just assume that I'm like conservative redneck, like drunk hillbilly kind of guy. I'm like,
in Ohio.
I mean, not all the time. I don't know. Like, I just kind of think whatever I want, and like if I disagree, I'm like, yeah, this is stupid. And it's like, you can be like, you can have more than one opinion on things. Like, you don't have to be a guy who hunts and also hate other people who like don't, or you can agree with someone on this side and you can disagree on someone on this side, and it doesn't matter. But, that's a conversation for another day. So I want to thank you for coming on the podcast, Christine, and in sharing your story and just, taking time to write this book. And I can't wait for you to write your next one and complete it. I'll definitely be checking it out. And, do you have any closing, statements you'd like to give to the world, and obviously where people can, buy the book, find you, more about you, your social media and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. Thanks to everybody for listening this far. And you can hang out and talk to me on Instagram at Rugged Outdoorswoman. I'm very accessible there. So if you have questions or just want to share your story back, I'm happy to talk. And the book can be purchased at aloneinwonderland.com. If you order it there, it comes from me personally, and it'll come with like some goodies. And it is also available pretty much anywhere books are sold. So if you have like a local bookstore you like, or have to order it online from somewhere else, you can get it pretty much anywhere you can get books. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and maybe you can come back again next time when your next book's finished, or whenever you want. Really, I don't care. I love talking to people. So, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.